Hello, my name is Susanne Evans and welcome to the ChangeStories podcast. This is a podcast for people who are interested in creating change, whether that is within organisations or for individuals. In each podcast episode, I will have a conversation with someone about their work to share their story. Each story and conversation will provide you with ideas and inspiration for your own organisation or for you personally. To find out more about each episode, including further reading, and to share your change stories, go to www.changestories.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Change Stories podcast. My guest today is Philippa White, author of Return on Humanity, this wonderful book that I'm showing you now. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, Susanne, it is so great to be here. I've been looking forward to this. We've had this in the diary for a little while, and I'm just so pleased it's finally worked out, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
Oh, likewise. It's totally mutual. And you're joining me from Brazil, so the other side of the world, which is very exciting.
Yes, I am. Yeah, it's a sunny day, and I'm in Olinda, which for your listeners, if they just want to Google Olinda, it's right on the coast of the northeast of Brazil, right in just sort of right below the equator. So that's where I'm sitting right now.
Very good, very nice. Well, thank you for joining. I'm going to introduce you to the listeners using your bio from the back of your wonderful book. So Philippa White is a global thought leader, social innovator, and the founder and CEO of UK-based company TIE. For over 20 years, she's been dedicated to unlocking the potential of corporate leaders and their companies by igniting the power of a people-first approach to business. So that is you. I've been very much enjoying reading your book. I've got loads of questions for you about it. The first one, and what I ask everyone who comes on the podcast who's written a book, is why did you decide to write it? Was there a particular moment that you thought, I need to write this book now?
It's such a great question, because I always ask people the same thing when I ever have an author on mine, because there's always sort of a bit of a story behind it. But it's actually, I've been doing the work of this, experiential leadership development work for about 20 years. I mean, I moved to Brazil in 2005 to kind of create what I create. It's now all over the world, but I've been based here for almost 20 years. And I've had, if you've done something for long enough, and if you've done something in an interesting way for long enough, you tend to have a lot of people sort of in your ear saying, so when are you going to write a book? When are you going to tell people about this? God, you've got so many stories. You've got, all these things that are happening. You just need to put it down somewhere. And I always thought, I need to write a book. I need to capture this somehow. And then I heard about Alison Jones and Practical Inspiration Publishing. And I just thought, I couldn't really figure out what the book would be, and I really just needed help. So I did the first kind of proposal writing challenge, which was the most powerful thing I could have done. And to anyone who's looking to write a book, this is a plug for Alison and her publishing house, because it really is incredibly powerful how she gets people into that thinking. So I just followed the process, and I realized what I needed to do, and this is basically why I wanted to write a book, was because I've been doing this for 20 years, and it is incredibly powerful, sort of the thinking, I guess, that we get people thinking after getting involved with our programs. And I wanted to kind of lift the lid on this secret sauce, if you like, of the power of what I call human assets, and just tapping into our humanity. And I come at it from different points of view within the book, but I just felt, that's what this is. And I just really wanted to kind of lift the lid on that, and hence Return on Humanity. So, yeah.
My experience is very similar, actually. So I had the same sort of thing. Lots of people asking me about it. Happened to me, Alison. Did the proposal challenge like you. Loved it, but wasn't quite in the right headspace at the time to do it. So sort of put it to one side for a couple of years and then came back to it. And
wow, did you?
Yeah.
Well done for coming back to it. Thank God for that, because you can imagine there's probably a lot of people who sort of think, oh God, this is a bit much. And then sort of, I was so worried I wouldn't. So I was like, I need to just, pace, keep the pace. So I just went,
I'd just come out of finishing my doctorate. So I'd done loads.
Oh God,
of
you've done. Yeah, right.
And then I was like, I want to do it, but I don't want to write anything ever again. That was kind of where I was at. And I knew I wanted it to be different. I didn't want to do academic writing, and I'd found academic writing really hard. And I needed to kind of almost cleanse my brain of that way of writing before I could feel like writing anything else. So I think I did the proposal challenge about 6 months after I'd finished my doctorate, and it was just my brain just was like, no, you can't. I'm not doing this. I'm not allowing you to do it. So yeah, I put it aside for a couple of years and then came back to it.
Good for you for giving yourself. I mean, it's it's so good that you listen to your intuition, because I can imagine, like you say, going from academic writing, where I've read so many academic business books, and I have to say, oh my God, they're so dry. And you just like, I mean, no offense to anyone who's written one, but it's just like, for me, I really prefer the kind of the story ones and the ones that are just more creative writing. But I'm sure you have to make that shift change, because an academic, paper or academic book is just, it's a very different vibe. So yeah, you would have needed to shift change your brain.
It is. Although I refused to do I refused to go full academic. I was like, I'm going to do it my own way. So
well, considering you're the story lady, yeah, you kind of need to do that.
But it was, I needed to get that out of my head for a bit. Anyway, we're talking about your book, not my book. So the title of your book is Return on Humanity, Leadership Lessons from All Corners of the World. I really like the title. I love the cover of the book. I think it really stands out.
Thank you.
How did you come up with the term Return on Humanity?
Well, it's also a great question, and it comes back to Alison's proposal writing challenge, surprisingly. Or not surprisingly, probably, again, showing just the power of this. So obviously you're going through the process, and I knew that it was going to be focused on humanity. And I was playing with Humanity 2.0. I'm like, humanity, Humanity 2.0 was kind of where I got to. And I'm sure you did this with your proposal writing challenge as well, but we used a lot the Facebook groups, and we would put sort of, what do you guys think? And you would have your little, it might be the people from your group, but there are also other people I seem to remember in that Facebook group who are also just sort of involved in sharing stuff. And I mean, I wish I could remember the name of the person who helped me, but it was that person who said, why not return on humanity? Rather, and I think it was, I put a few options. So it was Humanity 2.0 and some other ones, which I can't for the life of me remember, but I do remember Humanity 2.0. So I had a few different ones, but none of them were really kind of jiving. And I think what this shows with anything, you just can't do it alone. Like it's a team effort with anything that you're creating, whether it's your company, whether it's writing a book, whether, so even the cover, Michael Jagger is this extraordinary designer from Vermont. He has a phenomenal design company called Solidarity of Unbridled Labor. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're just this extraordinary group of people who are very mission-based and very purpose-focused. And I've known him for years. He's always been really inspired by the work I do. And he very kindly offered, through Solidarity of Unbridled Labor, to design the cover for free.
Wow.
So I knew that again, I'd have these meetings with people where we would be kind of brainstorming ways to kind of bring to life, whatever the title would be. And I had a brainstorm session with him and this really good friend of mine, Juliana Xavier, who is also somebody who's written an endorsement for the book. And it was the three of us, and we were just talking, and it was actually Juliana who said, you know what, this needs to be ROI crossed out with an H. And I was like, that is genius. And so when I had, because as you will remember, going through this process, you always have a number of different covers, right? So I definitely had three favorites. One was a hand, and it was return on hand, written on the hand. There was no ROH crossed out. There was another one, which I can't even remember now. I'd have to go back and see. And then there was this one. And interestingly, when I put it to the people on things like Instagram or Facebook, and people were sort of voting, or LinkedIn, the hand actually was one of the ones that came out on top. I think it was possibly even a favorite to ROI. But I just thought, no, this is too clever. I just think we need to, but it took a while. Obviously, I worked with Alison's team. They kind of brought it to a place, but I was still too busy. I want something much cleaner. It needs to be clean. We need to take out everything. No. It just needs to be clean. And so then Solidarity of Unbridled Labor took what Alison's team did and just moved it on, and then the colors and everything. And it was very like even just the red being, the capitalism, crossing it out to be the orange, which is, so you've got the red, which is sort of like the capital kind of red, and then it's like humanity is orange, and it needed to be a very vibrant orange. And so we thought all about the just that thinking. So yeah, so that's where that came from, and it was a team effort. It was a team effort.
It always is. You're really right. I think you can have these ideas, but you need to, you get in your own little echo chamber, don't you? And you need to have other people go, actually, what about this? But what I really love about it, I think it's really clever, but also it really spoke to me of that idea that it's challenging this kind of bottom line mentality.
Yeah.
So and it's right there, right on the cover, but in a very human way. So I think back to the day when I had a proper job and I worked in one of the big consultancies, and the term was always human capital, which I always hated because it was just really naff. No, it's people, it's humans. Let's just call them people and humans instead of human capital. But what I like about your title and the way you use it in the book is it's that back to being humane, treating people properly, having that real human-centered leadership, which I think is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting because again, God, as the creative process is so important for anyone actually, because that's where you manage to draw out a lot of your thinking. I'm sure you do this too. It's sort of as you're maybe writing a post for LinkedIn or you're writing a chapter of your book or whatever, it's sort of as you're going through that, you suddenly kind of realize what it is, I guess, that you're wanting to say, or, oh God, that's what I've been doing for so long. Now I've actually managed to kind of understand, sort of point it out, kind of. You've been, obviously the basis of what I've been doing, I was very clear about what I was doing, but it was, I think even just that thought of we all have these human assets. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what school you've been to or university or how much money you have. Every single person has access to these human assets. So, kindness and empathy and cultural intelligence. And okay, cultural intelligence, yes, you probably need to travel somewhere else or at least coexist with someone from another place to be able to develop that. But we all have access to those competencies. Just unfortunately, society, culture, family pressures, university pressures, it sort of beats it out of us, really. And we're business schools, you're taught about competition, you're taught about kind of beating the other person, you're taught about making as much money as possible at all costs. But then you sort of dig a little bit deeper and you think, hold on, is that sustainable? Does that even make sense? Is that even what I want to do? Does this even speak to me? But to kind of dig that sort of that much deeper, we've kind of been taught not to do that. And so what I guess I've wanted to do with this book, like I say, it's sort of lifting the lid on the secret sauce of the programs and the leadership development stuff that I do, even though I don't really talk about it in tons of detail, because it's sort of talking about things from a much more human point of view. But I think it is also just almost giving people that permission and just saying, it's okay. You can actually be nice and empathetic and thoughtful, because interestingly, it's better for you in your day-to-day life. And obviously I've sort of broken the book into 3 parts. So you sort of got the beginning part, which is you're a human being before you're a leader. So you have families and you go on holiday and you have maybe children, or you've got people around you who you love. Like, you don't suddenly become a completely different person when you then become a leader. And it's sort of saying, okay, so we're humans. Life is just better when we're nice to people and, tap into these human competencies. Leadership in business, interestingly, is also better if you tap into these human competencies. And interestingly, the world thrives when people and businesses tap into these human competencies. So there's 3 sections, and it's just, rooted in, there's lots of proof points and stats and stuff, but then there's the stories, and that's, leadership lessons from all corners of the world. We work in about 29 different countries around the world, from Syria to Brazil to Malawi to Guatemala, and it's just, lots of stories of, this is a truth that's, all around the world in many different sectors. They can prove it too.
And, one of the things, of course, that I loved about the book was all the stories. I think it's so lovely in a business book to have so much time and effort put into recounting the stories. And there's stories that from your own life experience, but also what I found really fascinating was all the stories you'd gathered from people around the world, which I just loved. Obviously I love stories, but I think it genuinely makes it a really interesting book to read, because it's those insights and those okay, that's a little nugget I can take from that, and I absolutely love that aspect of it, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think that's also why, like you, I'm sure you've had, you have had sort of people say, God, write about this, you need to bring this to life, other people need this. And again, just because, every single program that we have in some way really gets under the skin of a completely different part of the world. But also we've got this beautiful mesh of these professionals that come from London or New York or wherever. And then you've got Syria or, all these different places and these truths that sort of come out and these aha moments. And yeah, I've been capturing them for years, but I've had this Word document for years, kind of all these case studies or all these sort of nuggets of thoughts. I'm like, what do I do with this mud board? It's not a mood board, it's a mud board. It's just bah. So
lots of stories, which I absolutely love. But also, I think what really struck me was that this kind of, we've almost forgotten how to be like this in the workplace, which I think, as you say in the first part of your book, we are human first before we become business people, leaders, consultants, or anything else. But then we forget and it gets taught out of us. Do you find that it's challenging sometimes to get leaders to get back into that way of thinking? Do you find any resistance to being more human?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. One of the competencies I talk about a lot is vulnerability. It's even a subchapter in the book. And vulnerability is a funny one, right? Because just taking a bit of a step back, what we do is it's experiential learning. And, theoretical learning is important, academic learning is important, but experiential learning, it has to be done with some kind of experiential learning to really get people understanding it, right? So to say someone needs to be empathetic, you can put it on a slide or a PowerPoint presentation, but it's really hard for someone to kind of understand why or what that even means without having been in a situation to show the power of being empathetic. Taking it one step further, vulnerability is a really tricky one, because the more senior you become, the more expert you become, you get into this groove of thinking that you have all the answers, or you need to sort of show that you have all the answers for people to trust you or for people to listen to you and to take you seriously. The funny thing, actually, and this is the funny thing about life, the more vulnerable you allow yourself to be or show, the more people will trust you and the more people will see you as being authentic and the more people will like you. But oddly, that doesn't seem to always, play out in leadership roles. So we have a number of different types of people who come on our programs, and they do tend to be quite senior at times. And the programs that we create are these opportunities for people to crack challenges in a completely different part of the world that people from London probably don't know anything about, quite probably, in a sector that is so completely different to, whatever sector that they're coming from. And as a result, they really do need to say to themselves and to other people that they don't know, because it's impossible for them to know about street kids in Brazil, for example. It's literally impossible. It's another language, it's another culture, it's a whole other subsector of sort of life, of communities. And it's just very different to sort of a marketing background, let's say, that the people might be coming from, and, a very well-to-do London background where they probably studied at somewhere like Eton or something. It's just we're talking completely different worlds. And it can be that someone's on their own. So we have different experiences. It's like an immersive experience. So I've got somebody, for example, from an ad agency in London. They literally just arrived in Brazil. They're here for 30 days, living in a completely different community to what they would have come from in London. And I've got, we have teams of people that work as, it's a cohort experience. So, sometimes if people are here on their own, I get tears and they're crying. And then sometimes, we've got these cohorts But what's really interesting is you get to sort of halfway through the program, and that's basically where they need to kind of know the brief, and they kind of need to know where things are going so that they can start to create whatever it is that they're going to be creating. So as they're kind of at that part, they're used to working in the way that they usually work, which is very much client and, well, if it's an ad agency, for example, client and ad agency. So when you're in that relationship, which again, it's odd because it's sort of the agency sometimes needs to sort of prove to themselves that they have all the answers, and so it's very much, you know, we're gonna aha, you know, there's gonna be create a sort of aha moment for the client, and then we're gonna present to them. With our programs, I keep trying to sort of say this is not how it works. You need to work in conjunction. There should be no surprises to the organization. It should be something that you're sort of creating with them. And you say, I don't know, can we talk to other people? And I don't really know how to get to that. God, how strange. Yeah, okay. You're trying to pull out the answers and ask lots of questions. So usually, even though I have the conversation with them, I say, you need to say you don't know, pick up the phone, call people. If you don't know, just I will get someone on the verge of tears. This is a really, senior individual. This happens like 98% of the time. And, we've talked about the importance of being vulnerable. We've gone through training. We've gone through so many things. But then inevitably, Philippa, can we have a conversation? Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a conversation. I'm supposed to be presenting tomorrow. I'm supposed to be presenting with the team. So sometimes there's sort of a more senior individual and they feel that they need to like lead the team. And, and then they're like, but I just, we're not ready. We don't have the answers. We haven't like found that sort of nugget. And I said, okay, that's fine. Like, that's not a problem. I'm just curious, like, have you spoken to the street kids, for example, or have you spoken to the users of whatever this organization, supports people with? Well, no, because we thought that we should really come up with sort of ideas to then, and like, we're just not there yet. And I said, but rather than contacting me, have you already had this conversation with the organization? Have you said, we haven't been able to come up with ideas. Who else can we speak to? I don't know. No, we haven't done that yet. No, I wanted to talk to you first. I said, well, I highly recommend you have exactly this conversation with the organization. You have nothing to prove, like literally nothing to prove. Like you need to work with them. Like it's a collaborative thing. They will actually really like you for saying that you don't know. Really? Do you think? Yeah, 100%. Just contact them. It will be fine. And sure enough, so then they contact them, and then it's all fine. And then it's the analogy I use is someone on a bicycle with training wheels, and it's almost like we've just like cut the training wheels off, and suddenly they're off now. And I usually never hear from them again. We have like check-in sort of things, but like we don't have any more of those moments. But I have to almost give them that permission, even though we've gone through it so many times. Like I say, we have really like intensive training. We have coaching. I have check-ins with them, but even still, we get to this point. And once we've had that conversation in real life where they've actually sensed that, oh, this is what you mean, at the end, when we have the evaluations and we have the sort of, we have learning logs and they capture their thinking, and then we have the final coaching session at the end, inevitably, that person or even that group of people say, God, it just goes to show, I'm never going to forget this. It is so important to work with people, not doing to people. It's so important to show vulnerability. It's so important to say you don't know. It's so important to like have those conversations with people we don't normally have. I mean, they get to that point, and that's actually the point of my whole leadership program. It's sort of trying to get people to really understand, what do these words and competencies mean in real life? Yeah. In real life. But you have to go through that sometimes to realize how powerful it is to say, I don't know, to show that vulnerability, because then suddenly it develops relationships, the work is better, but you just have to kind of go through that. So yeah, that's an example of one of the competencies that it's hard for people to get until they've actually been there.
And it resonates so strongly with me, with my work around organisation change, that when change goes wrong, it's because you've got leaders who aren't willing to say they don't know, or this isn't working, we need to do something different, or let's just do some communications. We haven't got all the answers yet, but you'll know we've got to wait right until the end before we tell anyone anything. I think the work you're doing to create these learning experiences for people is amazing, and I think we need more of that in the workplace, of just people learning that this old model of leadership that we used to have, the kind of hero, knowing everything, all of that sort of thing, it doesn't work. It never worked, doesn't work now, that's for sure. And it's okay for you as a leader to turn around when someone asks you a question and say, oh, do you know what, I don't know, let me go away and I'll figure it out. And then you do.
Exactly. And I think, when I'm speaking, I like to use the example of kind of, in the industrial age, and people were creating widgets in factories, and there was no sort of social media, and it was a very kind of regional, the factory is there, people are all come from the sort of same area, they sort of clock in, clock out, and you have people just doing whatever they're doing. I'm not saying it was a nice way of working, and I'm not saying that it was, a dignified way of working. And of course, you had the sort of owner of the factory, and it was very kind of, do this, clock in, you need to work, 12 hours, and who knows if they had breaks. But it worked because no one knew what their rights were. People needed to get money. There was no way of sort of really communicating to other people. But the thing is, like, the world has completely evolved. People realize, hold on a second, I don't need to be treated like that. This is bonkers. I'm not going to be treated like that. I have my family. I have my life. I've got things that I value in life. And so, and also it's an interconnected world. So if people now have access to information, they also have ways of, calling out companies that might say that they do one thing and actually are doing a completely different thing. There's nowhere to hide. And so in this interconnected world, it doesn't work anymore because people won't put up with it. People won't stand for it, and they'll figure out if you're not living up to what you say you're living up to. And then when you bring in the stats of engagement and you start to look at, okay, actually, if people aren't engaged, let's do the math. So if I'm not engaged with somewhere, I don't feel like I'm being treated like a person. I don't really connect from a purpose point of view with that, the mission of that company, or I don't feel like people are empowering me, or they're not sort of allowing me to be who I am, or whatever it might be. All right, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. So then I just do the bare minimum. I'm going to be sick a lot. I'm not going to really show up to work. I'm actually not going to come up with tons of ideas because I'm literally just doing the bare minimum. And then I'm going to quit. That costs, the Gallup study in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, it's something like $400 billion a year to to US companies. It's really expensive to have people who aren't engaged. But on the flip side, if you look at people who are engaged, and again, I can relate to this. If I'm engaged, my ideas are amazing. Like I come up with I feel inspired, and you bounce ideas off of other people, and then you sort of have that flow, which is just, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's just so amazing. You're like, oh, that's amazing. You sort of build on that. You show up to work. You're hardly ever sick. You want to do what you can to make that company great. You feel great. They feel great. You're not really sick very often. And that, that makes sense. So then a company is 23% more profitable. So it just makes sense. If you have people who create psychologically safe environments, if they empower people, if they understand, empathize with people's day-to-day lives and them as people, then that's what then creates that environment, right? And engagement and belonging. And that's everything. If you can create that for people within a company, it is a very profitable, way of running a company.
And I totally agree with all of that. I found it really interesting as well that you talk about burnout in that context, that, people can experience burnout and disengagement as the same sort of two sides of the same coin, in a way, that you become burnt out because you're working in an organization that doesn't make you feel you belong. You don't feel you connect with anyone, and that can lead to all these other things further down the line, which I don't think I'd necessarily seen that connection before between this kind of very much command and control organisation structure, which, as you say, dates back to the Industrial Revolution. And, we're always hearing about this kind of epidemic of burnout, and the two of them are connected because we're having to work in places that fundamentally are not humane and are not set up for us as humans.
Yeah, and your values don't connect, right? And you sort of think, what am I doing? It's interesting, actually, because the next sort of focus of my next book is going to be focused on an element of resilience, but resilience is a funny word because it also really plays into that thinking of values and am I actually in the right place and am I doing the right thing? People in companies often play the resilience card of saying, come on, you need to step up. You need to be more resilient. You need to deal with this. You need to, don't be so wet. Come on, like push yourself. But the thing is it's like, well, hold on a second. People are burning out and it's not about pushing people until they crack and then expecting them to be resilient in that situation. That's not what we're talking about. Resilience is sort of coming up against some kind of challenge and being able to overcome it, and wanting to overcome it. But that's then tapping into their values and it's tapping into their strength and it's going to the core of somebody. But no one's going to be resilient for a company that isn't treating them. Again, it comes into that sort of belonging in engagement category, right? Or in that thinking. So again, it's really, people need to be really careful. You've got big tech companies who, have all the breakfasts and the lunches and the beanbag chairs or whatever they have. And then they're expecting people to just be resilient. Look, we've created all of this stuff and then now you just need to be, resilient. But it's delicate. It's delicate.
And, like you, I struggle sometimes with resilience. I think I think it's been used wrongly in some organisations as this, exactly as you say, this sort of, stop making such a fuss, get up and come back to work, and I think it isn't that. It's giving people the mechanism and the support around them that they can recover from whatever it is that they're dealing with, because we all have lives outside of work, and I think a good thing that came out of COVID is we started to see people's personal lives a lot more, because we were
looking in their living rooms.
Here we are, talking to each other, and we can see each other's houses and the dogs walking past and barking and children running around. And I think where previously we'd perhaps tried to hide away some of ourselves, that you can't anymore. That's there, and that's a good thing. But I don't quite know when resilience did start to become that sort of tool, a stick to beat people with, but it's not the right way of using it. So I'm like you, I use it quite cautiously as a term normally.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think actually post COVID, you've now got the sort of, well, everyone needs to come back into the office discussions that are going on, and I think again that's not necessarily reflective of people's lives and the reality of work. If you're not seeing anyone, why do you have to go and sit in an office? It's stupid. It's old fashioned. We need to be moving forward with some of these things.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
So, and the next book, I should look forward to hearing about that. That sounds...
Well, yes. I mean, it's still, it's still very early days, but yes, it's when anyone goes through anything that, there's moments in our lives that open portals in our thinking, and when there's times where you need to grab that portal and just sort of, see what it's showing you. And anyway, there's been a few portals that have opened for me. So I'm, excited about it. I've been writing a lot. So let's see where it goes.
I shall look forward to it. My friend Susanne Evans has written a book about being the heroine of your own story, which is wonderful.
Ooh, that's nice.
She talks about hearing the call, that at various times in your life you will hear the call, and you can choose to ignore it, or you can deal with it. But you basically get a trail of breadcrumbs which lead you to
totally
where you find yourself.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I love that. Goosebumps again.
Her book's very good. I definitely recommend it. But I like that idea that you keep hearing these things, and sometimes it's not the right time. It's like we were talking about the book proposal. It wasn't the right time for me to do it. When I actually did do it, it was better than it would have been if I'd waited. A fundamentally better book emerged 2 years ago.
And to that point, I think there are also times where sometimes we don't listen to ourselves. I think our intuition, but also our bodies, we've been living with them for, I'm 47 years old. So, there's a lot of knowledge there. Mm-hmm. But when we're stuck in that routine of, okay, just get the next email out, just write the next thing, just do this. Okay, I've got to pick up the kids in a bit, dinner, bed, wake up, do it again. You sometimes don't listen to that, and you, push yourself perhaps too much. Or you sort of just think, okay, no, just push that aside. I just need to do it. They say I need to do it. I'm just going to do it. And, just for the last year, really, I've kind of been a little bit more aware of when my body's sort of saying, the last 6 months, I think, when your body's like, no, actually, no, you really shouldn't do that trip, perhaps, or don't even just, you were going to go and work out. I think you're too tired. I think you probably shouldn't. I know that you feel that you should, but you probably shouldn't. And then you do go and work out, and then you get sick the next day, and you're like, damn it, I probably shouldn't have done that. And you sort of and I just think that there's times where we just keep pushing because we think we should. And I think we all just need to be a little bit more aware of when our bodies or our minds or our intuition is possibly saying something else. And like you say, it would have been very easy to just sort of keep pushing and to do the book because now, but you're like, no, actually, I will do it. I know I will do it, but now is not the time. And it probably was better having given that space. And, it's these moments where we just really need to stop and remember that sometimes our subconscious has more conscious than we actually give it credit for.
Oh, 100%. And you talk about it in your book, don't you? So this self-awareness is like a superpower for leaders. It is, yeah. To be able to have that level of understanding of self. And it does require, practice and habits, doesn't it, to make it happen. That it's not, when we're busy, we don't automatically know what's going on.
And actually, just the self-awareness point, I'm going to give another shout out to, because I talk about Sam in my, and actually she just sent through an email, which is so funny. She's the global people director for Next 15, and she is one of the most extraordinary people first leaders I know. She runs that company. She's got a seat at the table with the COO and the CEO. She is people first as they come. And she's extraordinary. And she really pushes any kind of training that focuses on self-awareness. And that's the sort of stuff that we do. And we've done so much work with Next 15 over the years. And it really is focused on that, and just not enough businesses take that seriously enough. And self-awareness, when I talk to my business school actually, or talk to other, leaders, and you sort of say, so who's responsible, like, where does it come in to focus on these competencies? And interestingly, many, I've had this conversation with people, and they say, well, yeah, I think it's like the self-help people. And it's like, how does that make sense? Just tell me how that makes sense. So we know that these competencies make businesses better, but it needs to be up to the individuals, like the employees, to focus on their competencies to make your business better. Like, where does that, it totally doesn't add up. No, you need to have businesses too. The more that people can understand how to live their life with intention, the happier they will be, the better they will be as leaders, the more psychological safety you will have within that business or within your teams, because you've got happy leaders. And there's just way too many leaders who are in positions that they don't want to be in, for all the reasons we talked about right at the beginning, because of, family pressures, business school pressures, whatever it might be. And it's just really important that people do live their lives with intention. We all need to, and we need to stop and remind ourselves to do that. But it does take in reflection and, yeah.
But also, I think the problem with putting it at the door of, we'll stick that with self-help, it then makes it go into the sort of the sphere of woo-woo, and then people think, oh, well, I don't need that. That's just, weird and odd, and I'm not gonna think about it. And actually, I totally agree with you. I always talk about reflection is the superpower. It's not weird. It's not woo-woo. It is actually taking time to think about how things have gone. Think about what you're doing and the impact that you're having on people. Think about how you feel about stuff. Because if you don't, you're motoring through life without ever stopping. And that's terrible.
terrible, like really dangerous, actually,
Really bad.
for everybody involved. Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
We're almost out of time. I can't
I know,
believe it.
gosh.
It's absolutely flown by. I've loved this conversation. I love all the stories in your book. Just quickly before you finish, is there a particular story in there that's a favourite of yours, or one that when you heard it, it surprised you?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Well, I think one of the ones that is definitely a favorite, that I do sort of I touch on it quite a bit when I'm speaking as well, and I'll make it a short version. But I think, back to the point of purpose and shared purpose and people, just the importance of it. I think I talk about Avihara in my book, and the sailing regatta. And there's this regatta that's actually about to kick off here at the end of September. So there's this regatta that goes from Recife, so where I am, well, I'm in Olinda, but Olinda's right beside Recife. So if you look at the map, Recife to Fernando de Noronha, which is this island that's 300 nautical miles from Recife. And you get these massive boats. You get boats that are, sailed by sort of Olympic sailors, and you just get so many different types of boats. And over the years, this boat doesn't race anymore, but this boat is called Avihara. It's a trimaran. It's made of wood. It's worth, I think, the numbers are in my book, but it's about $40,000. It's like, and it would be racing against like carbon fiber, massive boats, again, raced by, Olympic sailors, worth millions of euros. And what's phenomenal is this boat was skippered by a guy called, my partner called Guga Peixoto. And he managed to pull together every year. He's a professional sailor, but every year he would pull together this team they were not professional sailors at all. Literally, I know many of these people I probably know all of them over the years. When they'd be lawyers, environmentalists, designers. They were not professional sailors, but all of them had this shared purpose that they knew what the capability of this boat was, and they were going to beat the big boats. And you had these 5 guys on, and it's grueling because this boat is small. It's 300 nautical miles in the middle of the sea, waves in your face literally the whole time. And they literally, there were 5 years where they won the Fita Azul. The Fita Azul is when you are the first boat to cross the finish line. And they did it, not once, not twice, not 4 times, 5 times against all odds. We're talking these other boats had so much more money. They had, the professional, like Olympic sailors. They had literally on paper, they had everything. But Avihara won. Why did they win? They won because of sheer determination, shared purpose, just like knowing what is possible, and everyone together being like, we are going to do this at all costs. And I just think that says a lot, because when you have a group of people who believe in something together, they feel like they are understood. When they would win the award for Avihara as well, they never received the actual award. They always donated it to the other people from the island. When you go to Fernando de Noronha, there's posadas called Avihara. People have Avihara tattooed on their skin.
Wow.
It became like this incredible thing that the people of Fernando de Noronha here in Recife, Guga's name is known like all over the place because he's the guy who like pulled together all these people and did made the impossible possible. And I think just leaving your listeners with that, because I think that's what we're talking about with these competencies. They're not woo-woo and they're not soft skills. There's these critical power skills that can genuinely make a huge difference. And it comes down to psychology. It comes down to belonging. It comes down to, engagement. And it's these skills that do that. Yeah.
Wow. What a story. Well, what a place to finish. I think there's no better illustration both of storytelling, but also this power of what these things can do. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me
with us. If people want to connect with you, find out more about your work, where's the best place for them to have a look?
philippajwhite.com. You'll find my book there. You'll find my speaking there. You'll find, work. And then there's also a link to the Thai leadership site. So you can also find more there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been a joy to speak to you today.
Thank you for having me
on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Change Stories podcast. I love this conversation and I hope you did too. Thanks as ever to my wonderful guests and to Pete Morgan at Monkey Pants Productions for making the podcast sound amazing. If you want to find out more about this or any other episodes of Change Stories, go to www.changestories.co.uk where you will find all the episodes and show notes. If you have enjoyed listening, please rate and review the Change Stories podcast on your podcast listening platform. And do please let me know if you have ideas or requests for future episodes. You can contact me and find out more about change and storytelling on my website, www.feldsparconsulting.com. Thanks again for joining in with the Change Stories conversation.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.